Ethan Pierce hadn't slept in almost 30 hours. The glow from his dual monitors bled into the darkness of his apartment, painting his face in flickering shades of blue and white as the playback bar on his editing software crawled forward. The final render was almost done. Final video of the season. He murmured to himself, sipping cold coffee. Let's make this one count. The title flashed across the screen, Beach Horror Story, UPDAT. He stared at it for a long moment before clicking upload. The progress bar filled slowly, 10%, 25%, 50%, as if the system itself resisted. The cursor trembled over publish. When he finally pressed it, the air in the room seemed to shift. His laptop fan groaned. Lights dimmed for half a second, and a faint static hissed from his speakers. He thought it was just YouTube glitching again. But it wasn't. It had been 2 weeks since that night on the coast. 2 weeks since he and his friends, Leela, Ryan, Zoe, and Marcus, had driven out to the old beach at Grayhaven Point to film their Halloween special. They were paranormal vloggers, half skeptical, half believers, always chasing ghost stories. But this time they'd caught something. Ethan hadn't been sure what it was. He'd gone through hundreds of frames, enhancing, filtering, stabilizing. But no matter what he did, the image never quite made sense. In the fog, just beyond the tide, a tall, thin silhouette moved against the surf, limbs too long, head tilted at an unnatural angle, something glinting where its eyes should have been. And when he'd enhanced the audio, the ocean whispered their names. Not once, but 5 times. The upload finished. Video posted successfully. Ethan exhaled and leaned back, rubbing his eyes. The thumbnail looked perfect: the gray beach, a figure in the mist, and bold white text that read, UP. We found it. He refreshed the page. First view. Firstly, first comment. Why does the tide move backward at 12:34? That's not how water works. This feels wrong. Like something's watching me. Stop the upload. Ethan froze. The last comment had his friend's name. Marcus hadn't logged on since that night. None of them had. They'd all gone their separate ways after what happened at Grayhaven. No calls, no texts. Just silence. He clicked the profile. It was blank. No videos, no icon, no followers. The account had been created 5 minutes ago. A faint vibration ran through his desk. He thought it was his phone, but when he looked, the screen was black. Then, the video started auto-playing again. Except this time, he hadn't clicked anything. The beach appeared on screen, waves rising and falling under moonlight. Leela's voice echoed faintly. Ethan, are you getting this? The tide's pulling backward again. Then came static. And then, someone else whispers through the speakers. You shouldn't have posted it. Ethan yanked off his headphones. His heart pounded in his ears. He scrubbed through the footage again. Nothing, no voice. Just ambient sound and wind. He rewound to 3C42, the timestamp where the whisper had been. The screen showed only dark water lapping at the camera lens. But the reflections, they weren't his friends. There were faces in the water, dozens of them, pale and eyeless, watching. He shut the laptop, breathing hard. It was just exhaustion, he told himself. The mind playing tricks after sleepless nights. But the air felt colder. Damp, like the sea had seeped through the walls. He grabbed his phone and called Leela, straight to voicemail. Then he tried Ryan, no signal. Zoe, disconnected. Only Marcus' number still rang. After 5 rings, someone picked up. Static filled the line, then a ragged voice, barely audible. Ethan, it's not done. You shouldn't have uploaded the update. Marcus, what are you talking about? What do you mean not done? A sound came through the phone, like rushing water, and then, it's awake. The line went dead. That was when the knock came. 3 soft taps at the door. He turned slowly. The hallway beyond was dark. No shadows under the door, no movement. Another knock, louder this time. He approached, hesitant. "Who's there?" No reply. He checked the peephole. Empty hallway. And then, as he started to turn away, the sound of waves came from the other side of the door. Not footsteps. Waves. He stumbled back, heart hammering, and the monitor behind him flickered on by itself. The video was playing again. Only this time the camera panned toward the shoreline, where 5 silhouettes stood at the water's edge. It was them. Leela, Ryan, Zoe, Marcus, and him, all standing in a perfect line, staring at the sea as the tide pulled backward, like the ocean was inhaling. The thumbnail changed on his screen. Instead of UPDEA, "We found it," it now read "Alive," and below it 1:23 viewers watching. He hadn't gone live. He hadn't even set up a stream. But as he watched, the live chat began flooding in, comments flying faster than he could read. Wait, are those real people? Someone just moved behind them. His next. Ethan's chest tightened. Behind the figures on screen, the tide was boiling, churning black water like something massive was moving beneath. One by one, the silhouettes turned to face the camera, and they all had his face. The stream ended abruptly. His apartment went pitch black. Somewhere outside, through the night air, Ethan heard it again. Faint but unmistakable. "You shouldn't have posted the update." Then the crash of distant waves, inside his apartment. It started as a joke. Or at least, that's what Ethan kept telling himself every time he looked back at the messages that began it all. It was late September, a month before Halloween, and the group chat, Nightland's crew, was full of half-baked ideas for their next video. Ryan, "We need something fresh this season." Haunted asylum to done. Abandoned mall to done. Ghost forest me views. Zoe, "Algorithm hates us." Ren, "Lila, what about water? Everyone's doing caves, mines, dark lakes." Marcus, "Not lakes. There's a beach here in Grayhaven. It's different." Ryan, "Different? As in, no cell service, and we die of sand rash." Marcus, "Different, as in people don't come back." That was the first time Ethan saw the name Grayhaven Point. They had all known Marcus for years, but he rarely talked about his hometown. He'd moved away right after high school, claiming, "There's nothing left there," and never mentioned it again. When he finally offered to take them to a local legend, everyone thought he was joking. But there was something in his tone that night, a tightness in his words, that made Lila glance at Ethan. She knew he could never resist an unsolved mystery. "Wet?" Ethan typed. "You mean real disappearances?" Marcus replied after a long pause. "Yeah, bodies wash up sometimes, but never the same ones that went missing." That message silenced the chat for a full minute. Then Ryan broke it with a nervous laugh. Perfect Halloween content. 2 weeks later, they were in a van heading toward the coast. The road wound through pine forests shrouded in salt mist. Leela watched the fog curl around the windshield like breath. She'd been quiet most of the drive, scrolling through local news archives on her tablet. "Hey, Ethan," she said softly, "did you know there's no official record of Grayhaven Beach existing on county maps after 1979? Ethan glanced at her in the rearview mirror. "What do you mean?" "It's listed as private property, but the weird part is, nobody owns it. The deed was sealed by the Coastline Preservation Bureau 40 years ago." "That's not normal." Marcus shifted in the passenger seat. "They sealed it for a reason." "Witches?" Ryan asked from the back, chewing on a protein bar. Marcus stared out the window, his reflection flickering in the glass. "Because the sea keeps taking people." By the time they reached the coast, daylight had already begun to fade. The beach stretched endlessly, gray sand glistening under the dim sky. The air smelled metallic, sharp, not like normal sea salt but like rust. Waves rolled in slow, unnatural rhythm, too synchronized, as if choreographed. Ethan turned on his camera and filmed a slow pan of the horizon. Day 1 at Grayhaven Point, he said. Urban legend or coastal glitch? We're here to find out. Leela winced. Can you not call it that? Call it what? A glitch. It feels wrong. Zoe grinned, brushing windblown hair from her face. That's exactly what our viewers love, though. Creepy vibes, unsolved lore, spooky couple tension. Instant algorithm bait. Ryan laughed. You say that like the algorithm's some hungry god we have to feed. Marcus didn't laugh. Maybe it is. They set up camp near a half-buried signpost. The letters were so eroded that only fragments remained Grayhaven Coast, and then a single line, barely visible. One the tide retreats, so must you. Leela traced the words with her fingers. This looks carved by hand, she murmured, not printed. Like someone wanted it to last. Ryan pointed his camera. Perfect intro shot. Creepy warning sign, check. As they filmed, Marcus stood motionless by the shoreline, staring at the water. Ethan called out, Hey, man, you good? Marcus nodded, though his eyes never left the horizon. It's lower than I remember. The tide? He nodded again. It shouldn't be this far out. Not this time of day. Ethan shrugged. Climate change, bro. Everything's weird now. Marcus didn't respond. They began filming B-roll slow drone shots of the beach, sound bites about haunted shipwrecks and missing divers. Leela held the boom mic, her hand trembling slightly as she scanned the open sea. That's when they found it, the stone circle. Half, buried in the sand near the tide line, were a dozen flat stones arranged in a rough spiral, each etched with strange symbols. The carvings weren't words, not in any language they recognized. Just jagged spirals and thin lines that seemed to twist inward the longer you looked. Zoe crouched and took photos. This is insane. These markings look ancient. Don't touch them, Marcus said quickly. Why? Ryan teased. What? They cursed. Marcus's jaw tightened. Something like that. Ethan zoomed in with his lens. Tell the story, Marcus. This'll make a killer voice-over. Marcus hesitated. The wind picked up, whistling between the stones. My grandmother used to tell stories about this place, he said quietly. Before they stopped mentioning it altogether. They said there was once a village here, before the sea took it. The villagers built those stones to mark the boundary between their world and... He paused, searching for the right word. The deep? The deep? Ryan echoed. A's in the ocean. Marcus nodded slowly. They believed something lived beneath the shore. Not in the water, beneath it. It wasn't a god, exactly. More like the sea's memory. They called it the drowned one. Every few decades, when the tide went too low, it woke up. The villagers built these circles to keep it asleep. Leela's voice trembled. You said the tide's lower than it should be. Marcus didn't answer. They camped that night by the dunes, a small fire flickering against the cold wind. The fog had thickened, curling like pale fingers through the camp. Ethan recorded a segment near the fire, his face half lit by orange light. Local legend claims the Grayhaven shoreline hides something ancient beneath it. Tonight, we'll find out whether there's truth to the myth, or if it's just another ghost story. Ryan turned the camera toward Marcus. Final thoughts, hometown boy. Marcus looked straight into the lens. If it's true, then by sunrise, it'll already be watching. Zoe rolled her eyes. Chill, it's a story. We'll film, sleep, and bail in the morning. But Lila couldn't sleep. She woke in the middle of the night to a sound, soft, rhythmic, almost like breathing. The fire had burned to embers. Everyone else slept, their outlines faint against the fog. She turned toward the ocean. The tide had receded again. Farther than before. The seafloor stretched outward like a wound, exposing wet sand and clusters of black stone. And out there, near the horizon, something moved, slow, deliberate. A tall shape, swaying slightly as if underwater, though there were no waves. Leela blinked hard. When her eyes opened, it was gone. But in the sand beside her, she found a single wet footprint leading away from the shore. Only one. At dawn, they found Ryan's camera half buried near the waterline, still recording. When Ethan replayed the footage, the screen flickered between static and shapes. For 1 second, clear as daylight, they saw a figure standing behind the stones. It was facing the sea, arms outstretched, head tilted back like it was listening. Then the video cut out. Ryan swore he hadn't left his camera on. Marcus looked pale, whispering to himself, "It's too early. The tide hasn't even turned yet." Ethan frowned. Too early for what? Marcus met his gaze. For it to wake up. That night, Ethan uploaded a teaser clip from their first day to social media. Just 30 seconds, the spiral stones, Marcus's eerie story, the strange low tide. The caption read, "Grayhaven Point, coming Halloween. You won't believe what we found." Within an hour, the post had over 10,000 views. And one strange comment that caught his eye, "Don't film the second night." He showed it to Leela. "Creepy fans, huh?" She didn't smile. "It's not a fan. That account's private, created tonight." Marcus came over, saw the username, and went still. "What's wrong?" Ethan asked. Marcus's voice was barely audible. That was the name of the fisherman who disappeared here in '79. The sun rose over Grayhaven like a pale bruise. It didn't so much rise as emerge, low and colorless, filtered through a sheet of salt fog that clung to the water. The air was damp and strangely still. No birds, no insects. Only the slow, sucking pull of the receding tide. Ethan stood at the edge of camp with his camera in hand, recording the morning drift. Behind him, the others packed their gear, shivering under damp jackets. "Day 2. He said into the mic. "The beach looks different this morning. The tide's gone farther out, again. Locals say that shouldn't happen, but—" He trailed off, panning the lens toward the exposed seabed. It stretched endlessly. What had been blue water yesterday was now a dark, glistening field of wet sand and stone, dotted with craters and strange rippling patterns. Leela joined him, rubbing her arms. "It feels like the ocean's holding its breath." Ethan nodded, focusing the lens. Or pulling it in. They decided to head into town for breakfast and back up batteries before returning for more filming. Grayhaven itself was little more than a ghost village. 10 weather-beaten houses, a general store, and a single diner whose sign read, "Marlene's Catch." Inside, the place smelled of old grease and seawater. The few patrons turned to stare as they entered, silent and suspicious. A heavy-set man behind the counter watched them with hooded eyes. His gray beard was tangled, and his hands were cracked with salt. Ethan recognized him from a newspaper clipping Leela had shown him. A local fisherman named Reed Holloway, one of the last to still work the shore. Marcus stiffened the moment he saw him. "That's him?" he whispered. "Reed's the one who found the last body." Leela gave a nervous glance. "Maybe we should talk to him." Ethan agreed. They needed a local voice for the video. A bit of color and legend. He turned on the camera, approaching the counter with his usual friendly confidence. "Hey, Mr. Holloway, we're doing a short documentary about the Grayhaven coastline and its history. Mind if we ask you a few questions on record?" Reed's eyes narrowed. "History." He wiped his hands on a rag. "What do they call it now?" Ethan smiled politely. "We've heard stories. About disappearances, the drowned one, the tide patterns." The man's hand shot up, palm out. "Don't say that name." The diner went dead silent. Even the hum of the old refrigerator seemed to pause. Leela stepped forward gently. "We're not here to disrespect anything, sir. We just want to understand what really happened here." Reed stared at her for a long moment, then sighed. "Sit down. They slid into a corner booth. The rain had started again outside. Thin, whispering drops against the window. Reed leaned forward, lowering his voice. You kids think this is just another ghost story, but what's buried under Grayhaven ain't a ghost. It's older than that. Older than the town, older than the maps. Used to be, people lived here and worked the tide pools. Then one season the sea went wrong. The tide pulled back too far. The fish disappeared. Then the people started hearing things, songs from the water callin' by name. He rubbed the side of his face, eyes far away. They say a boy wandered out when the tide was lowest. Came back wrong. Didn't speak. Didn't blink. Just stared at the ocean till his skin turned gray. The village tried to bury him in the dunes. But the sand moved that night. The tide came in faster than any man had seen. It swallowed half the town before sunrise. Zoe shifted uncomfortably. So, like a flood. Reed gave her a cold look. Like a mouth. Ethan swallowed. And you've seen something yourself? Reed hesitated. His voice was hoarse when he spoke. 3 years ago. I was fishin' out by the rocks when I saw hands in the water. Not swimmin'. Reaching. Dozens of just under the surface. I tried to pull my net down. I took my partner instead. He pointed to his leg. Ethan noticed now. His left boot was made of wood. Leela's hand trembled as she recorded the audio. Why stay here then? Reed's eyes met hers. Because somebody has to. The circles don't hold forever. Marcus leaned forward. The stone circles. You mean those carvings on the beach? Reed nodded grimly. They keep it asleep. Or they used to. Every few decades, the markings fade and someone's got to carve again. That's what the old folk did. But when the last of died, nobody carried on the work. The town got smaller. The sea got hungrier. He turned to Marcus. Your grandmother used to help carve them, didn't she? Marcus's face was drained of color. How do you know that? Reed gave a mirthless smile. Everyone who's from here's blood's tied to the shore. You don't just leave Grayhaven. You just wait long enough, and it calls you home. When they left the diner, the fog had thickened into a wall of pale gray. The ocean was invisible beyond it. Okay? Ryan said, forcing a laugh. That was officially the creepiest brunch of my life. Zoe checked her phone. We got service for like 5 minutes inside. The teaser video's blowing up. 60,000 views overnight. Ethan nodded absently, still thinking about Reed's words. Then we better get more footage before the weather turns. Marcus didn't move. He stood facing the fog. He's right, you know. About the tide. What do you mean? Leela asked. Marcus pointed toward the sound of waves, though they couldn't see them. It's not pulling in and out. It's circling, like it's looking for something. Ethan frowned. Water doesn't look for things. Marcus's voice was almost a whisper. This one does. Back at the beach, the world seemed drained of sound. The fog muffled everything. The wind, the sea, even their footsteps. It was as though the air itself held its breath. Ethan adjusted his camera focus, trying to capture the strange haloing effect around the dunes. Through the lens, faint shapes flickered in the mist, almost like silhouettes. When he lowered the camera, they were gone. Leela was kneeling by the stone circle again, tracing the carvings. Some of these look newly cut, she said softly. Ryan scoffed. You think someone's still maintaining them? Zoe raised her phone, filming. Or maybe Reed's right. Maybe the markings fade and need to be fed. Ethan gave her a look. Can we not use that word? Fed, she teased. Come on, it's creepy, fits the vibe. But then she froze. In her phone screen reflection, just behind her shoulder, was a face in the fog. Pale, featureless, inches away. She spun around. Nothing there. Zoe, Ethan asked. She forced a laugh, lowering the phone. Probably lens flare. But when Ethan replayed her clip later, frame by frame, the reflection blinked. That evening, they tried to interview Marcus on camera about his grandmother. The fire crackled between them, wind tugging at the tent flaps. "She used to talk to the sea," Marcus said quietly. "Said it could hear her if she whispered the right way. When she died, she asked to be buried near the waterline. Said it was closer to home." He looked up. "She said something else, too. Said if the tide ever pulls back farther than the horizon, don't run. Just stand still, because running means you've already been seen." Leela shuddered. "Shen by what?" Marcus stared into the flames. "The one who remembers." Later that night, Ethan couldn't sleep. He stepped outside to film B, roll of the fog rolling over the sand. The wind had died completely. Only the slow, distant crash of waves echoed from far, far away. He zoomed toward the shoreline, but the mist made it impossible to see detail. Just a shifting gray void. Then something moved in the lens, low to the ground, crawling. He focused harder. For a second, it looked like a person dragging themselves along the wet sand. But their body was wrong. Too long, too thin, leaving no trail. Ethan lowered the camera. Nothing there. When he looked through the viewfinder again, the figure was closer. Half the distance now. Still crawling. He stepped back, heart pounding. "Lila," he whispered. No answer. He turned to go inside, but his foot hit something soft. He looked down. A fish, fresh, glistening, still twitching, lay in the middle of the dunes, impossibly far from the surf. He picked it up. The gills were carved with tiny symbols, the same ones from the stones. He dropped it and ran for the tent. Inside, Marcus was sitting upright, eyes open, whispering to himself. Ethan shook him. "Marcus, wake up." Marcus blinked slowly, voice monotone. "It's not asleep anymore." The tent shuddered. Outside, something massive moved beneath the sand. The ground rippled like breath, and from the fog came a sound like a wave breaking. But instead of water, it was whispering. Hundreds of voices, murmuring names, their names. By morning, the fog was gone. The beach looked almost normal again, calm and empty under pale sunlight. But where the stone circle had been, the sand was smooth. Every carving erased. And in the center, half buried, lay Reed Holloway's wooden leg. The fifth night on the beach was never supposed to happen. By then, two of the crew, Zoe and Ryan, had vanished. One moment they were filming near the shoreline, and the next their flashlights winked out as the sea folded over them in silence. The others found only their cameras, still recording, their lenses filled with static and the sound of breathing that wasn't theirs. Ethan, Leela, and Marcus tried to leave Grayhaven, but every road out of town led back to the coast. The fog closed around them like a living maze. The ocean wasn't behind them anymore. It was everywhere. They realized too late that uploading the footage had changed something. The OP date wasn't just a video. It was a signal, a doorway. Every view, every share, every comment fed the thing beneath the tide. The drowned one no longer needed the sea to spread. It had the internet. Marcus confessed what he had hidden all along. His grandmother hadn't died naturally. She had drowned herself to keep the drowned one sleeping, offering her blood to seal the carvings one last time. He was supposed to take her place one day. That was his inheritance. But he ran, and when he brought Ethan and the others back to film, the sea took it as permission to wake. The last footage Ethan captured shows the three of them walking toward the tide during a dead calm. The water was mirror, smooth, black as glass. In the reflection, 5 figures stood instead of 3, the missing friends among them, smiling, mouths full of seawater. Leela screamed. The reflection smiled wider. Then the camera fell. The tide rushed inland in a single, impossible wave, swallowing the camp. Days later, Ethan woke up in his apartment with no memory of how he got there. His laptop was still on, screen glowing. The video had already been uploaded. Title: Beach Horror Story UPDATEL Full Documentary, uploaded automatically. Scheduled for 3:33 a.m. When he played it back, the footage wasn't what they filmed. It was live. The camera showed the Grayhaven shoreline, completely submerged, while faint shapes moved beneath the surface. Every few minutes, one of them rose just enough for its face to break the water. They all had his friends' faces. Then one more surfaced, himself. Ethan tried to delete the video, but the option was gone. The screen glitched, flashing the same message over and over. Viewers are still watching. Within a week, the video went viral. Millions of views. Viewers reported hearing waves from their phones, even when muted. Some swore their screens rippled like water. A few disappeared entirely. Comment sections filled with timestamps, people claiming to see faces, names whispered in the background. Each new upload spawned another. Mirror copies on random accounts, even those never linked to Ethan's. No one knows where the original file came from anymore. Ethan's channel was deleted, but the stream never stopped. It appears under different titles now: The Shoreline Livestream, Grayhaven Feed, Beach Horror Story UPDATE. Sometimes, late at night, it goes live again for a few minutes. The feed shows the same endless beach under a blood-red sky. And if you listen closely through the static, you can hear someone whispering from the waves. You shouldn't have posted it. Then comes the sound of the sea, rushing closer.